It's 6:30, and I would like to call to order the Shenandoah County School Board public hearing on the budget. And I would like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda as it has been presented.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Gutschall. Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rickard. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So I'm going to read a notice of this public hearing. It's being held to receive feedback from the community on the proposed fiscal year 26, that is the school year 25-26 budget. The Shenandoah County School Board welcomes public comment from Shenandoah County residents, parents, or guardians, as well as from current students and employees of Shenandoah County Public Schools. School board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting or this hearing. Each speaker may speak up to 3 minutes. We have 15 minutes reserved. We can go over that if we need to, but it looks like we may be able to fit that in. We'll see. All comments should address the matter at hand, which is the fiscal year 26 budget. And any complaints regarding division employees should be directed to the school principal or an appropriate school division official. School board expects that each speaker will be courteous, modeling for our students how one can respectfully disagree with others' views. Speakers will address their comments to the entire school board and not to one individual school board member, to the superintendent, to a staff member, nor to the audience. Speakers will not engage in personal attacks. Speakers have been afforded the opportunity to sign up on a document that has been provided by the clerk of the school board. And I see that list is being brought to me even as we speak. At the moment, we have 3 speakers signed up to speak. If any of the speakers would like to present written comments to the school board, then they can present 8 copies to the school board clerk, and they'll be distributed appropriately. With that in mind, I'm going to ask the first speaker to come forward. That would be Ann Wenking.
Well, I've come to see that this isn't the most popular meeting here. I would like to thank everybody again, the board, superintendent, for hearing me out. I've looked through, some of the proposals, and I'm still here to advocate for an elementary school, and I see that it's option C. And I don't know if ABC means anything in this proposal when I looked at it, but I was hoping this one would be a letter A, because I think it should be the priority. And I think, I talk to kids, I do lessons in front of them every day, and I said, when you're weighing a big decision, you should look at the pros and the cons. And when I look at this decision, I see definitely more pros than cons by building an elementary school over the vocational school. It can solve, it can give opportunities to close down part of our existing elementary schools so they can be properly renovated. We can alleviate some of the traffic issues that we're experiencing in 2 locations, depending upon where we find the space. I again would advocate for Martytown at the county farm. I don't know if that's an option, but I feel like that's a great place. It's close to our park. We can get more bang for our buck if we're looking at $60 million for triplet, and you're looking at $40 million for an elementary school. You got $20 million to maybe work with for an aquatics facility. I think there's just more pros than cons. And I just would like everybody to consider that. I don't know how this decision is made ultimately, because this is all pretty new to me to come and speak. Up until until this year before you. So I'm not sure even how, this ABC thing is going to be decided. If that could be clarified or explained tonight, I would appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Kara, is it Rochek?
Morozek.
Rochek, thank you.
Good afternoon, board and superintendent. My name is Kara Morozek. I am a mother to 2 children at Sandy Hook. My daughter will be starting there in 2027. My son's in kindergarten. My other son is in 2nd grade. I have had the opportunity to volunteer in the school since my youngest was in kindergarten, and it's just been really a pleasure to see the teachers doing their best, and they're wonderful, and the joy that they bring and the enthusiasm they bring to my kids. It really is very meaningful, and I appreciate that a lot, and the support that you all give to them. But I'm here to talk also about the capacity issues at Sandy Hook. And I just jotted some notes down on my way in, but I've learned and I've read through some of the board documents that the capacity is at just shy of capacity, and I don't know if that's based off fire code numbers or whatever, but I want to express my concern that if we exceed those projections, that again, I'm not certain where those projections, who made the projections and what they were based on, but if we exceed those projections, what is the backup plan? Because our students, they can't be waitlisted. They're kindergartners. These are elementary students. This is a core function of what we're here to do, is to provide public education to our students. Just as an aside, I'll give some anecdotal thoughts. My kindergartner eats lunch at 10:30 in the morning every day because the cafeteria is so small, and he's starving. But they have snacks and things, but he's starving by the time he gets home from school. Both of them have certain specials like music and art, maybe every other week, maybe 15 times total in the entire school year. I would like them to be able to do that more, but because the school is at capacity, it's very difficult to do that. So I think that we can do better, and I ask that funding be designated for expanding Sandy Hook, considering expanding Sandy Hook, or building another school, because it really doesn't seem like being at this maximum capacity is a real alternative, as opposed to funding triplet tech. Thank you.
Thank you. Shane Waller?
Good evening. My name is Shane Waller. That's my wife, Kara. Obviously, I share the three kids with her. I would also echo her sentiments. Our experience at Sandy Hook has been amazing. We're just like maybe 10 or 15 minutes outside of town. Everyone there is fantastic. But I do see, as I do most of the pickups and drop-offs at the school, and I do see that the school is at the very max of its capacity during those pickups and drop-offs. Most recently, they moved to doing 3 pickup lines. So there's one in between the middle of a parking lot and 2 that are double stacked along the side of the building. So what this means is that the kids are walking through parked cars, some of them running as they're waiting to pick up kids, as they have to load into other cars. And every day when I pick up the kids, I just cringe about what would happen if someone didn't see a kid that darted in between those cars. And the only reason it's this way is because there's just so many kids at the school. I certainly appreciate that Triplet Tech is an important asset, and it's a very good program. But when you think about what happens if the capacity goes over the projections, where do those kids go? Where do the elementary school kids go? What's the plan? I don't know what that would be. Would we try to put more kids into Sandy Hook? That just seems very difficult to do. The flip side too, from looking at it just a numbers perspective, it is cheaper to build to build another elementary school than it is to expand Triplet Tech. You can put more students into another elementary school than you could in a Triple Tech. So the cost, the marginal cost would be lower to have an impact over more students, right? Right? You could affect more elementary kids by spending less money than you could by putting that money into Triple Tech. And again, Triple Tech is a worthy cause, and it's unfortunate that we're kind of have to pick one over the other. But I really would urge you to consider building another elementary school. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? We have until 1:45, at which time we will begin our next, our work session meeting. So I think we should just kind of hang loose in case somebody else comes in the next 5 minutes, because that was the period we allocated. And if they come, we'll let them speak. And if not, at 7:45, we'll begin our work session part of the meeting. I don't think the Orioles-Phillies game yesterday is going to
Yeah, I saw that. Probably not.
We have other activities out tonight that change anything.
We want to hear your ideas.
From the other meeting.
He's got to go.
He left all this stuff.
So it's educational capacity. It's not
Well, we have reached the time of the end of the public hearing on the budget. Unless there's any opposition, I'm going to adjourn that part of the meeting. So the hearing now is concluded, and we will move into our county school work session. Cheryl, I think we need to note that Mr. Street is temporarily gone, and we'll make an announcement when he returns. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for the work session as it has been presented?
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Rickard. A second?
Second.
Second, Mrs. Carlinio, thank you. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None? So 5-0, we've approved the agenda. And we're going to move into 4 items that we have on our schedule for the work session. And we'll begin with information on health insurance. Dr. Shepherd.
Thank you. I am very excited to hear some great information on health insurance. I'm going to turn it over to Linda to introduce our health insurance consultants.
Good evening, board members. This evening we have our health insurance consultants here from McGriff Insurance Services, and they're going to share with you some information about our upcoming renewal. Mr. Scott Chansey and Renee Yates.
Thank you, Linda. Can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Perfect. Pleasure to be here, so thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this evening about the health insurance renewal that is going to be effective July 1st. You may recall that last year we moved the medical, dental, and vision coverages from Aetna to Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we are facing what we refer to as, in our world, as a first-year renewal. First-year renewals have some inherent challenges with them, primarily on the medical side. There's not a lot of claims data since Anthem doesn't have a full year of claims information to underwrite the renewal. Recognizing that last year we negotiated a first-year rate cap with Anthem on the medical plan. That rate cap was 9.9% increase on the medical, and that is what we received on the medical this year, was a 9.9% increase. Remember, we bundle the medical with dental and vision here at the schools, and so there is 0 increase on the dental and no increase on the vision. So when we blend the medical 9.9 with the dental and vision at no increase, given the relative premium dollars, it works out to about a 9.4% increase in the current rates for the renewal with Anthem effective July 1st. That equates to about $1.1 million in total premium. And remember, that premium is split between the employees paying a portion and the schools paying a portion. Thoughts, comments, questions?
So just as a reminder, we had budgeted for a 12% increase. So that is 2.5% less than what we had budgeted for. So it's good news.
Good news.
And it's probably the lowest increase in a while, right?
Yes.
It's been
Oh, you can
gotten
have
up
it.
pretty.
Yes, it would be a yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have more information in the budget presentation about the cost of health insurance for our employees plus employee plus family. I think you'll be pleased with. Any other questions for Mr. Chansey? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Always nice to get good news.
Thank you, sir.
So we're moving right into our second issue, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what you're passing around now is the highlights for the discussion for budget and CIP.
Yes, and Mr. Gilmore will be putting that up on the slide in just a second on the screens. So start every budget, ooh. Sorry about that. Start every budget conversation with the timeline. And you will notice that the General Assembly concluded on February the 22nd. We have some information in a later slide on what that could mean for Shenandoah County Public Schools. Tonight is the school board public hearing, and we would like to thank our 3 speakers who came out to speak for the budget, and then also the budget work session. Tomorrow, the county administrator and the Board of Supervisors, the county administrator will present his proposed budget and CIP to the Board of Supervisors. So I want to iterate that tonight is the time for school board members to actually say, I like this, I don't like this in the budget, so that when we come back on March the 13th, which is when this will be approved, we have some good information, or we can get information for you to make an informed decision. So tonight's the night. If you have anything that you want to include or anything that you want to exclude, if you see anything as we go through the budget, and we'll go slow. So let's make this a kind of a back and forth between all of us, so that we can make sure that the budget reflects what you guys want as well. So March the 13th is when the school board will approve the budget, and then March the 17th, we have a Board of Supervisors school board work session to talk about the budget. And then the Board of Supervisors will come back to us on April the 15th and say, this is what Shenandoah County Public Schools gets out of the budget. And then on April the 28th, the school board will get back together and do a final budget adoption. So if, just say we ask for $1 million and they give us $800,000, we're going to have to make a $200,000 adjustment there. So I want to make sure that you guys are aware that there will be a last adoption, and that will be April the 28th. So always try to talk about our budget priorities where it meets our strategic plan goals, and it's academic achievement and growth, recruit, support, and retain enthusiastic professionals, high quality and adequate learning facilities are the 3 strategic goals that we focus on in this year's budget. So at the last meeting, I think it was February the 13th, there are no changes in any of these requests. They're new instructional positions funded, which are 4 English learner teachers, 1 middle school teacher to support increased enrollment, 2 paraprofessionals, 1 for students with disabilities, and 1 to support in Strasburg High School Library, 4 bus drivers to help reduce the number of double runs that we have on our campuses, and then 3 student support specialists. The total of those positions is a little under $1 million. Grant absorption, about $355,000. 1 assistant principal at Ashby Lee, that is now currently being funded out of All In Virginia funds, and those funds go away at the end of next year, but we want to go ahead and include that position in our operating fund this year. A 0.5 full-time equivalent health sciences teacher. This is the OT, occupational therapy, PT, physical therapy teacher at Triplet Tech. And it was funded this past year through the Claude Moore Foundation. And then also software packages that were either funded through CARES or funded through the All In Virginia will need to go into the operating budget this year as well. The very last item on this list is the new aviation program. And as I mentioned last time, we have a public-private partnership that is going to pay for this program for the operation, so for both equipment and teacher for the first year. So we will have to pick up that teacher in the second year, but we're so excited about that public-private partnership for the aviation teacher.
Could you explain a little bit about the scope of that? I mean, we talked before about flight simulation and passenger. Can you give us an overview of what that program is?
Yeah, I'm going to pass that to either Dave Heingartner or Chad Hensley. They probably know a little more than I do, but I know Dr. Heingartner has been talking with Todd Lynn about the actual scope of that program more so than I have.
Yeah, and Chad, you may have had more conversation that I had. I was just kind of intrigued by it and really excited that this could be something we would offer. So I was just kind of inquiring for myself. And I was asking him about the simulator, and I said, boy, I would love to get there and get my hands on that one day. What's that going to look like? And he said, well, it won't be one of the huge ones that you can literally sit in and close the doors. You know, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars for one of those. But it will probably, he's hoping they can purchase, it's a 360-degree screen that goes around and then has the controls that simulate the controls in an airplane. And that's the device that they would be using as a simulator. Then they would also be going up and flying at least once as part of the experiential part of what the students would gain from being in that course. They certainly want to do trips to airports also and visiting different airports and learning, you know, the pieces around that as well. So he told me when students finish this program in 2 years, they'll be halfway to being able to get their pilot's license.
Okay, so then I'm assuming that this thing is pilot-oriented for the
Yes.
time being. We hear a lot of auxiliary programs that have to do with flight simulation and ground control and all kind of interesting, cool stuff, which could be adjunct to this, but now we're focusing on that pilot training as the kind of our wedge entry into this. And it sounds pretty cool. And there's a lot of buzz about this in the state and about it actually happening here.
Right.
So
I can get the competency for you and send those to you so that you can have those, which will give a full list of
what the kids will be learning.
I'm happy to know that that's the initial focus. So I'm good.
And Ms. Campbell said that there was something in the General Assembly this morning that gave additional funds to Blue Ridge Community College for some type of flight.
Aviation mechanics, which is a program they have existing. The General Assembly has proposed to allocate money to expand that program.
Thank you.
So we're very excited about the program. We'll go through this list. We'll talk a little bit about what the General Assembly has proposed, and then we'll come back to it to see if there's anything that you guys would like to amend, add, delete. High quality and adequate facilities and learning, the capital funding, $6.5 million, and we will look at it more in depth here in a little bit. Inflation and increased service costs at $87,000. This due to increases at Peter Muhlenberg, student increases at Peter Muhlenberg. We are increasing their funds, and then also because the inflation for the cost of materials, we are asking for additional funds to support Triplet Tech. And then we have purchased new bus cameras at for the transportation department, and we will need to fund the software that runs those cameras next year. And then the last area is recruit, support, and retain enthusiastic professionals. Targeted scale adjustments, $220,000. This is to adjust the bus driver salary scale to align base hourly rates with increased contract hours, and then to regrade the athletic directors to align with high school assistant principals. Dual enrollment stipend, to give a stipend to each of our teachers who teach a dual enrolled class. Their load is more than a teacher who is not teaching a dual enrollment class because they have to keep two separate grade books and so on and so forth. So we would like to compensate them for that. And also their coursework has to be, they have to have like a master's plus 18 hours in their content area. So we'd like to compensate them for that. And then the compensation increase, either a step plus a 2% cost of living increase. I see that the 2% is missing there, or a 3.16 cost of living adjustment. And then allocation for health insurance increase at a little over $1 million. So I mentioned earlier that we would talk about health insurance. actually. In your packet, turn to page, because it's not on here. Turn to page 4, slide 7, and you will notice that the proposal is for employee plus family to go from $803 this fiscal year to $655 next fiscal year. And if you look at the bottom chart there, you will notice that that actually puts us in line with our neighbors, Frederick County and Rockingham County. So employee plus family is would be $655 here in Shenandoah. In Frederick, this current year, it would be $630, and then in Rockingham, it would be $516. So we would go from $1,250 in 22-23 to $655 in 25-26. Those are some great gains on health insurance over the last 4 years. We've made a lot of difference because that is actual money in people's pockets at the end of the day. So. Let's see. And then you will notice the next slide is the additional considerations. Recruit, support, and retain professionals. One thought, and this isn't included in that $1.3 million that we mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago, but a $2,500 retention sign-on bonus stipend for special ed teachers, which would cost $180,000. $2,500 retention or sign-on stipend for school counselors, which would be about $52,000, and then a $2,500 retention longevity stipend for staff with 20-plus years with Shenandoah County Public Schools, which would be about $450,000.
Is that once per year?
So it would actually, as a stipend, help me out, Kaylin, if I'm wrong, it would actually be split up between 12 months and they would get a portion of it every month so that it would go towards their retirement.
So each calendar year, they would get that,
Yes,
as long as they're teaching special ed.
as long as we maintain it in the budget and they are teaching special ed, yes.
Thank you for that clarification.
So,
Sorry, there's a question. So if we attract a teacher and we tell them that that's what we're going to give them, I mean, are we going to be committed to give it to them every year, or?
so if we
If
put
it's
it
in the
as
contract?
if we put it as a stipend, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Until we do away with that stipend, which typically doesn't happen. At the bottom of your salary scales, if you look at your budget book, on page 77, you will see the stipends for a teacher. There's a 15-plus hour stipend of $300. That means any teacher who has a bachelor's degree plus 15 hours would get a $375 stipend. Any teacher with their bachelor's plus their master's degree would get $3,171, so on and so forth. So it would be listed as a stipend at the bottom of their salary scale.
But it would be, I guess the question is, and it'd be every year, like that we would have to renew it every single year, so.
It would be ongoing until the school board opted to change the stipend list.
Okay, so they couldn't come back and say, hey, you didn't give it to us this year.
They shouldn't.
I mean, I'm just saying, we wouldn't have an obligation to have it so long as they're employed. It would be contingent upon whether,
As long as they're meeting the requirements of the stipend.
right, okay.
Yeah, I guess my view on it, I mean, kind of, you look at this and then you look at the other money that's being absorbed from the grants, it starts to add up. You know, long term, I'm not going to be here, but, you know, I think that's something to consider is, you know, you add 682 and then feels like we've been adding to the grant absorption pretty heavily the last few years. It's kind of continuing to go. So, I mean, that's 900 to $1 million, 900 something thousand to $1 million there additionally. So I think that would be a concern long term. I think the stipend, at least this year, is great. It's necessary, but I think if you kind of try to commit to that next 5 to 10 years, that's could cause some issues just trying to find that money as it continues to grow. So just my perspective.
Do you have any other ideas of how we could retain our special education teachers?
Yeah, I don't know. Money isn't everything. We know that. Helps, but we'd have to be creative in that. I just think long term that's a big challenge for our area.
How many openings do we have right now for each one of those, special ed and also counselors?
School counselors, we have 6.
6 openings.
We started the year with 6, and we currently have 6.
And how many do we need?
20.
What, 20?
And special ed, we started the year with 4, and we currently have 3.
What do you mean, 3 special ed teachers?
Vacancies.
Oh, vacancies, okay.
Yes, not total, yeah.
I was gonna say, did everybody quit? Okay, so how many do we have and how many do we need for the special ed?
Special ed, how many? Kaylin will
I
get.
will get that number.
And the 6 is 6 vacancies out of 20 that we need?
The counselors, we have 6 vacancies out of a total of 20 positions.
Okay, that's what I got.
We have about 66 special education teachers.
And how many do we need?
Linda, did you say 3?
So far, 3.
You mean 3 vacancies?
Yes.
Okay, so we need 69.
It's 66 total positions.
Okay,
We filled 63 of them.
okay.
Yeah. All right, I think. Any other questions? We do want to update you on what the General Assembly did, which is the next slide. Derek's putting that up here in a minute, so.
If I can just say something here, I mean, with this, we know that we're hurting with the special ed and retaining and all that. I've talked to other people and they seem to think that this is something that would help. I had suggested the idea of the stipend for staff, just because I thought it would be something really nice to do for them, but, if it's a lot of money. So if we needed to cut it back or just leave it off altogether, that's fine. It was just an idea of trying to reward the people who have been with us for that long. So I'm just gonna leave it there and see where we are.
Well, I'd like to, I think that's a good point, and tag on to what Kyle said a few minutes ago. It's easy for us to say money isn't everything, but I think for a special ed teacher, teaching conditions and the pressure and empathies and all the other things that go into making for job satisfaction are important considerations. And it's not easy to come up with non-monetary benefits. In other fields, you might be able to get compensatory time or lack of duties assigned or other things. And I think I'm sure the staff has probably been creative about that, but we probably need to continue to figure other ways that that the environment for these special ed teachers is improved, or that there are other ways of professionally compensating other than other than money. Easy to say, hard to do, I understand, but we can always look at some creative approaches to ways that might be done.
Over the last number of years, special education and school counselors have been our highest vacancies across the board.
Exactly.
Melody, I want to thank you for putting that together. I thought it was a good idea. Does anything come to the front of your mind when we talk about not compensating them financially to retain them or draw people in?
So some of our neighbors are actually doing a retention bonus or stipend for their special ed. I don't know that they're doing it for school counselors. And I'm not sure about the longevity, but when we look at where we lose teachers, it's at 11 plus years. And if this would help us keep our teachers for longer, because we want our most experienced teachers here, that would be a huge benefit. Because we're currently having teachers who have a few years of experience mentoring our brand new teachers. So we would love to have teachers who have many years of experience mentoring our new teachers. So, it just shows that we appreciate our special ed teachers, our school counselors, or, you don't have to do all three. You could do one, you could do two, you could do none. But this is just the opportunity to look at this. And Ms. Hodge had the opportunity to talk to 2 school divisions that did this, and she asked what how the other staff felt, and the answer was?
We did not hear a word, no complaints at all.
Yeah, I believe for special ed, we need to do something. When you sit down and you listen to the different lesson plans those teachers have to go through compared to their general education counterparts, it's mind-blowing. And to not try to figure out a way to compensate them, to retain them, I don't know what we're going to do.
So I wanted to go back to this slide to show you what the cost of health insurance, I talked about it a little bit, but there you can actually see it on the screen. Employee plus family, you'll see that it's, it went from $1,249.99, and we're proposing for this coming year to be $655, which I find pretty exciting. And then down below it, you'll see, you'll see where it, we compare it with our 2 neighbors. But those are this year's rates for those 2 divisions. Not sure where they'll go next year.
Hopefully, we're not constantly chasing them.
We've been chasing them for the last 4 years in employee plus family. And I think the work that we've done over the last 4 years will at least make us competitive with them. So then the General Assembly, we talked earlier about the General Assembly concluding on Saturday, and here is some of the information that we can expect from the General Assembly. Now, the governor actually has to sign off on these, but Ms. Campbell, do you want to talk a little bit about these 3 bullet points here?
Sure. Based on original conference reports, staff estimates from the General Assembly, what has made it out of the General Assembly to the governor's desk, we can probably expect about $1.2 million for Shenandoah County specifically. The first bullet is to eliminate the recession-era support cap. What that was is during 2011-2012, the state put a false cap on the number of support positions they would reimburse. These are our bus drivers, the people at this table, principals, that type of thing. And they capped how many they would pay for. So this eliminates that cap from 2011, which would create about $1 million in additional revenue for us for those positions. There is a proposed add-on for special education support. It's to provide additional basic aid funding based on a per student allocation, prorated based on the level of need each individual student has as reported by the December 1 count. We can expect about $200,000 there, so $1.2 million that in our operating fund we could use in a variety of ways. We can also hope to see increased breakfast reimbursement. This would be a food service specific item to help continue to fund those programs. I have a note at the bottom that there was additional funding proposed for school construction assistance grants. I know we've talked a lot about those grants in our work sessions. Those are the grants that require us to have a project planned or in the planning phases and then apply for funding based on need of the locality, fiscal distress, those types of indicators.
So at the last meeting in February, I said our ask would be about 1.279 million. And if, you know, I don't know, we don't know what the details are going to be for that special education support, that $200,000. We don't know if it's things that we're already doing or things we would have to add. So I'm not, you know, I don't think we can count on that money at this point, but the $1 million we could count on. So if we take that 1.279 million and subtract that 1 million, then we're asking $300,000 from our locality. So just wanted to, you know, share that. So if, oops, wrong device. If there was something here that we wanted to add, then we could definitely consider that.
So we don't know if the 200,000 can pay for the.
We don't know. We don't have the details of that. Like I said, the General Assembly just concluded on Saturday, and in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have some details. We just don't have them now. But we have to remember that the governor has to sign off on this at the end of the day, so. So I'm gonna scroll back and see if there are any changes you want to make to any of these things that are included on this slide. All right, scroll forward. We'll talk about capital funding here in a minute. Any changes here on the $87,000? Hearing none, we'll move on to this slide right here. Changes, recommendations, additions. At the March 13th meeting, we will come back with a proposal. We should have more information on the state allocation at that point, so. So capital improvement plan. So we've talked about this, the long-term facilities plan. I had the opportunity to go to a Board of Supervisor meeting when they were talking to their financial advisor a few weeks ago. It was very interesting, and they are talking about major capital. So am interested in continuing to hear more about that. But what I am going to press the board on at the March 13th meeting is to actually adopt one of these long-term facilities plans, whether it's option A, option B, or option C, or a hybrid of any of those options. Option A has transportation, maintenance, and triplet at the top of the list, then a new elementary school, and then that one was based on the FCI rating. So the higher the FCI rating, the more in need it was of renovation. Is that right, Dr. Heingartner?
That's right.
And then option B was was lumping all of the elementary schools together, all the high schools together, and all of the middle schools together. And then option 3 actually has a new elementary school and triplet tech at the top, and then the elementary schools right under that. So understand that this long-term plan, right now it's a 25-year plan, but it could definitely be a 30 or a 35-year plan at the end of the day. We just needed to start somewhere. And so be interested in hearing your feedback on where you would like to go with our long-term facilities plan.
I was pretty gung-ho on the triplet tech idea, being that that's my line of work, and the CTE program, I think that's a big thing. To see the condition of our elementary school in Strasburg and W.W. Robinson and at the central campus, and I was just riding south on 81 the other day. Hadn't even paid attention before. They're building all kinds of new townhouses off the Woodstock exit as well. I've definitely got to go with option C. And is there a significance that the new elementary is above the triplet tech? Is that any significance at all?
Yeah, we put them on the same year at 2025. And what I would propose to the school board is that if we have any carry forward funds from last year, that we actually use those carry forward funds to do the architectural design with those carry forward funds of one or both of the projects. So that way, and I think our Board of Supervisors would be interested in hearing that request. So I'm not saying that they would fund it, but they would definitely consider it.
I'm gonna echo what Mike said. I'm really torn because I know the good that triplet does and this education for our kids. However, I do think that our hands are kind of tied, and the new elementary is probably or should be the priority, just because we see both schools are almost at capacity, and the time it's going to take to build this new school and get it going. By then, I think we are going to be at capacity, and I'm hoping if we could fund them both, that would be great. If not, my focus would be the new elementary, and then see if there are ways that we can start to alleviate some of the congestion that we have at triplet. I don't know, we've talked about this, just thinking outside the box, if there's things like we can move, like for example, all the health services that we have, or education related to health, if we could move it to another building, here with the hospital or Valley Health or some other place that we could actually move some of those programs out of triplet and then open up more space at triplet. I would like to see if we can start looking into that, but I do believe that the elementary is the priority, but I don't want to just ignore triplet, because this could actually help a lot of our students. This could be their livelihood once they graduate. So I don't want to completely ignore that. I just think the new elementary would be the priority.
Where are we in, once upon a time, it wasn't that long ago, we were all kind of dreamy-eyed about a nice, new, shiny, state-of-the-art triplet. And I think over the past few months, some of us have been looking at an alternative to having a nicely restored triplet that would be able to house some good new programs. And so I'm wondering if there's any kind of triplet dividend we can see in pursuing that a restoration, if you will, given that the footprint of that land would probably accept some sort of restoration without much, radical redesign. And I know that there have been people talking about land acquisition or land modification and so forth. Are we still pursuing that? And do we have any idea how much of a dividend we could expect if we took that route with a restoration rather than a new building?
So we actually did a 30,000-foot view with another architect to see what triplet would cost for renovation, and they did a couple of designs, and their new number, the new number from this other architect who has done a lot of work in Shenandoah County, was it was a little less than 40 million, so it was 37.5 million, but so right around 40 million for a renovation of Triplet Tech. And I know, yes, we need a new elementary school. We have two really big elementary schools. We have one that has 900 students, and we have one that has 1,000 students. And traffic there is a nightmare in the mornings and in the afternoon. So alleviating both of those schools. But the thing I don't think we have said out loud is Triplet has its own issues. For example, you can't plug two things into one wall in the culinary building, and there's other issues there as well. If we would move the healthcare to another location, we still don't have that high bay space to add some of those programs that would need that high bay space, like welding or diesel mechanics or things like that. So there are issues there as well. So it really both are very necessary.
I'm sorry, didn't interrupt. So the $37-40 million estimate does not include high bays?
It does.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yes,
okay,
it
good.
would. But we failed to mention that Triplet does have some challenges
Yeah, sure.
of their own.
Yeah, but so the delta there is about 20 million.
That's correct.
So there is a dividend that could be applied. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
I want to make sure Kyle or Larry didn't have anything. So one of our speakers tonight had mentioned, and I wanted to follow up on that. What is our emergency plan with the building that's going on in Strasburg and Woodstock if we exceed capacity? Is there an option to move 5th grade to the middle school and 8th grade to the high school type deal, or do we have a plan?
So the capacity that is, and I'm going to let Dave explain it, Dr. Heingartner explain it a little, it's an educational capacity. It's not fire code. There's this much square footage in each room, and each kid gets so many square feet. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go from the publication I believe that each of you have at your table, and it's the summary of the facility study. And so this is pretty much taking the entire facilities study with each individual school, about a year's worth of work, and put into the summary document. And one of the pages in section 4, 4.1 talks about school capacity and how they've arrived at that. And so I'm just going to explain that, read that as it was done by RRMM. In the elementary schools, well, first of all, I think it's important to also understand that no two schools, even though the schools' footprints may be almost exactly alike, that doesn't mean that every school has the exact same programs. And programs oftentimes drive the size of the space that a school needs. So since schools' capacity can be determined through multiple methods, and it's affected by varying programs and building features. So for square footage for elementary schools, the per foot student estimates that RRMM used where an average square foot per student figures over the last 5 years in the state of Virginia as provided by the Virginia Department of Education, which is 128 square foot per student. And that's a very common way to get a starting point for where you may go to begin with. And then you add in what different programs. Now, oftentimes, the elementary schools aren't going to necessarily have many different programs, but you can imagine that as you get to middle and high school. But there's consistency to levels, to these levels, leading to our recommendation, or RRM's recommendation, to use 125 square foot per student at the elementary school level for the level of service standards for schools ranging from 750 to 1,050. And there is basically, in the back of that book you have, back of that chart, Exhibit A and B and C, the state actually puts out a spreadsheet, a worksheet of which you simply plug in the numbers, and that's what their recommended educational capacity is. So I wish it was just as easy as, oh, this is what you do. But of course, nothing can be that easy. For middle schools, the square foot per student estimates is 145 square foot per student at the middle school level. For level of service standards for schools ranging from 1,050 to 1,350. But for 750 to 1,050 student middle schools, we recommend using 160 square foot per student. That's middle school level. And then for high school level, it's 190 square foot per student. And that's taking, like I said, taking into account the elementary, the middle school, and the high school capacity worksheets that's put out by the Virginia Department of Education. That's how they come up with it. That's a standard. And then once you start talking about programs, and here, good example, 2004, auditoriums, high school renovation, auditoriums, much more square foot, right? And then that was removed, so much less square foot, right? So that's how programs are added and deleted. And so, but those numbers would give you a standard starting point based on the number of students in the school.
Do those,
I wish I could explain it better, but it's not an easy thing to.
do those square footages change any for kids with IEPs or 504s?
There are certain requirements based on the number of students who can be in a classroom. And based on some of those factors, yeah, that's right. All kinds of different measures could be like that. For example, the shop, the ag area, there's certain requirements for how big that has to be per number of students that can be in that space. So it's not just one, cafeteria as an example. Certainly any place that has potential for hazard, like a gymnasium is a good example. So depending on the number of students, depending on the number of the number of students and the size of the school will determine the percentage or the size per square foot for the students. And again, that was for elementary schools. RRMM recommended using 135 square foot per student. For middle schools was 160 square foot per student, and for the high schools 190 square foot per student as a baseline.
To answer your question about the 5th grade move into middle school and the 8th grade move into high school, that's a possibility. We would like to keep our configurations K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12, but if we had to do that, that would be a possibility. There is capacity at the high school for additional students. And there's capacity at the middle school for additional students.
Thank you all for that.
Both schools? Like if,
Both,
I mean, both campuses? Like if we had the same issue in Central?
So if I'm doing my math correctly, and we're figuring an average of 125 square foot per pupil, right now Strasburg is over capacity. Would that be correct? The information you gave us the last time we met?
Strasburg High School?
No, I'm looking at Sandy Hook Elementary.
Okay.
We have pre-K through 12 enrollment fall 2024 of 829 students. If we multiply that by 125 square feet, we're up to 103,625 square
On
feet.
page 7, you'll see the information from RRMM. And it says, and that it's 829. Page 7 of this book.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now.
And you'll see they're at 96.62% capacity. Their capacity is 858.
What number are they using per pupil for square footage?
It's 135, right?
What number are they using for what?
Is that 125 square feet? We're up to 103, over 103,625 square feet. And it shows Sandy Hook is only being 87,439 square feet.
They used, I think they used 125, but they also used this worksheet.
Okay.
Yeah. So, to calculate it.
I think they used 135.
35.
35.
135 would be even more.
Yeah, it would be higher. Well, I thought it was,
If we go to 135, we're almost at 112,000 square feet.
Yeah. I wish they were here to explain it. That's the reality of it, is that this,
It just concerns.
what I was hoping we would talk about when we were at Triplet Tech about 2 months ago. but didn't
Just
quite.
concerns me with how much construction's going on in both Strasburg and Woodstock. We're like right on the brink.
I mean, the bottom line is it's close or over capacity. And it's, you know, there's no question about it. I mean, it's yeah, I mean, it's obvious. And, you know, I was just by there 2 weeks ago and there was 10 townhouses, I believe, were built. Someone said there's close to another set of going up now, so. And I know in 2016, the company that we were working with then said, you know, when it gets to around 85% capacity is when you want to start planning, because of the point that someone made about how long it takes to, you know, this isn't going to be built next year. You know, so.
and to answer the other question, these were in no particular order, A, B, or C, yeah.
Right.
Any other questions about any of those? Okay. And then we have our capital projects. So at the last meeting, I said I would give you some updated prices on a roof and some flooring and then a fence at Ashby Lee Elementary School. So you can see on that second column, I have whether it's urgent and necessary, and then the estimated cost and a few comments. And then right now, we're looking at safety and security. And I think if you're looking at this, the capital improvement plan, you can see all of these starting on page C19. So we have it out for a 5-year plan. The only things I put on here was for this coming fiscal year. So we have clock upgrades, which is necessary, fence. Typically, if they don't get funded one year, then we move it to a following year. So just know that that's a possibility. A lot of our necessary actually comes off pretty early because we typically go with the urgent first. Doesn't mean we always have to, because a necessary could be one of those projects we want to move forward with. The total of safety and security is $281,000, and the urgent in that category was $145,000. And anything that is in yellow that's in your CIP book either has an updated price or is new.
That's correct.
Is new to the list, so.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, anything that is highlighted in yellow is either new or has an updated price. Okay, so heating, HVAC. The total for heating, ventilation, air conditioning is $823,000. Urgent is $383,000. Roofing, I would say under roofing, that is probably one of our #1 projects that we'll want to get done this summer, is replacing the roof at W.W. Robinson Elementary School. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Doors and locks, 120. Again, it's necessary, not urgent. Other projects, you'll see I included both the renovation, new build of Triplet Tech, and then the construction of a new elementary school. It's not currently included in fiscal year 2026, but I wanted to include it there just as to keep a placeholder. We anticipate that all of the architectural fees for Triplet Tech will be $3.6 million. Very similar for a new elementary school. That includes from design through construction, so. Renovation of a new bus garage is there. Renovation of maintenance shop is there. We do have some money in this year's CIP for the bus garage. It's $200,000. That has already been funded. We started our playground upgrades at our elementary schools. We still have some work to do there. Yes, ma'am?
No, you said that you already apportioned 200,000?
200.
Have they been done already, or?
Nothing's been done at
Okay.
this point. Carpet, replace carpet with tile in the driver's ed room, and then replace carpet at Ashby Lee Elementary School. So the top one at $140,000 is replace carpet with tile at Ashby Lee Elementary School, and then the bottom one is for the driver's ed room at Strasburg High School. And if you look at your CIP, we have a couple of those replacements over a couple of years. Drainage at Triplet Tech, increased power at Triplet Tech.
Has anybody made those phone calls to find out if that power is available in that area?
So I know our architects did some high-level work, and yes, the answer is yes. So the total for maintenance, there's more, but the total for maintenance was 8.3 million. Urgent is 2.2 million. It's 2 million. And then we have transportation. I think Mr. Long would tell us our activity buses are early 2000s. Is that right?
We have 4 activity buses that are early 2000.
So 20-some, 20 couple years old, 20?
Yes.
Any questions so far? So we have our transportation at 1.6 for all for this ask, and then urgent is almost 1.4 million.
So for example, what did we get last year for the whole capital improvement?
3.3,
All that?
3.3 million.
And we're requesting, what is it, 8 something this
Where-
time?
Yeah, hold on.
Brace
Right there,
yourself.
10.
Yeah.
Urgent's 3.3, and that's typically what gets funded.
Yeah.
So, and remember that if we have any carry forward funds, sorry, I know I'm going through this fast, but renovate or build new triplet tech or construction of new elementary school, I think if we asked the Board of Supervisors to allocate that money back to us for architectural fees, I think they would be interested in hearing that. I don't know that they would fund it, but they would definitely be interested in that request.
Once we have those plans, let's say for the elementary school, based on what Kaylin told us earlier, at that point, we would be able to start applying for grants, correct?
You could apply for that construction grant. It is, I don't want to say unlikely, but we probably do not qualify because we are not a fiscally distressed locality. And those pay 10, 20, or 30%
Yep.
based on your LCI. We are probably looking at a 10 or 20% of total project cost funding should we qualify.
When I was looking at the projects that have been funded in the past, there were a couple that weren't fiscally distressed, but they were at 10% of the total cost. So if you think of 10% of $40 million, that's $4 million. That's a nice sum of money for, but only a couple of them were funded out of the 30 projects that were funded. So
Thank you.
So what was the total again for the urgent? 3.3?
3.329. So is there anything on there that you would like to see deleted, changed, added, moved? It's a lot. And I believe Mr. Orts would say there's probably other things that didn't get included on the list that could have been. Somber. Any questions?
I am amazed at what you and your staff have been able to accomplish the past couple of months. I just can't imagine the amount of work that entails. And we're deeply gratified that you have made it accessible to us and somewhat understandable, so we've got some very, very graphic and pointed and focused things for us to take a look at. So kudos to your staff and for you for laying this out in such a cogent manner. We really appreciate it.
At the March 13th meeting, we'll be asking for decisions on all three of these things. So on our budget on the long-term facilities, and then also on the capital. So all three of those will be for action, and then we will forward them to the Board of Supervisors the very next day. So
Wow.
County Administrator and the Board of Supervisors to consider. And then the following Monday, we will be talking with them regarding our requests, so.
So we need to really focus in on those things that we're interested in and make sure they get some good hearings. So.
And if there's, if there's something that is under the necessary column that needs to have a focus, then we need to know that as well, because the reality is, when we go to look at things that we're not going to fund, then that's where we will, look first. If we ask for $10 million and we get 3, that's where we'll look first, is necessary versus urgent.
Now, why would you, like, for example, the increased power supplied for new programs at Triplet Tech, but you have it as necessary, wouldn't that be, is it because urgent is only safety or how did you, because I would think that that would be kind of urgent if you can't really teach.
In this book, this one, it tells how we determine whether it's urgent or necessary, and it is on page 5. Is that right? Yes. It shows the evaluation criteria.
Because I would have thought that would have been kind of urgent.
And however, it's Triplet Tech, right?
Yeah.
If there's going to be a major renovation, we don't want to chase, we don't want to do an electrical upgrade if we're going to
Okay.
do a renovation too. So, we have to take that into consideration as well.
That's right. Did we ever do that? Did we separate that for?
Yeah, Dr. Heimgartner has a number. I don't know if he brought it. I know he brought it last time. I don't know if he brought it this time.
And what was the number?
The Triplet Tech, if we renovated Triplet Tech, how much could come off of CIP?
Yeah.
So I don't know, I know he brought it last time.
It's about $1 million, a little over $1 million. Actually, you can take that, pass that around. This is the same thing you have, but it's with the Triplet Tech renovation, but not the Triplet Tech projects, okay? So it wouldn't be like double dipping almost, kind of. And it's in the title in the upper left-hand corner. It's this chart without the Triplet Tech projects or the desirable projects. So it has the necessary and urgent projects, and it has the Triplet Tech and the elementary school in there. But it just took out the 6 or 7 different projects that wouldn't be necessary at Triplet Tech if we did a full renovation. And those tallied to a little over $1 million.
And do we know if those were mostly urgent or?
They were mostly necessary.
Necessary.
Yeah.
Any final questions on the budget? Thank you, Dr. Shepherd, for that. No rest for the weary. You're going to discuss the status of the school board norms. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Item 2.3.
So So attached to the agenda items were the current school board norms as well as a draft document that highlighted all of the proposed modifications from all of the school board members and myself. The draft school board norms was presented as an informational item at the Thursday, February 13th meeting, and tonight there's an opportunity to discuss the norms.
So are we going through these tonight and line in, line out, or?
Not sure how we want to proceed, but let's make sure we understand what we're dealing with. So attached to our agenda are the school board norms that were adopted in April of this year, but there were, if I'm correct, there were no changes at that point. It was default to the previous school board norms, but they were readopted, if you will. And so that is one item. The second one that is there is titled Draft Shendo School Board Norms. And this is unless I'm incorrect, this is a draft that was submitted by Mrs. Carlinio. And that's available there, and there are suggested changes clearly discernible there, so we can go through those and discuss those. I have created a draft myself on suggested changes that I would like to see, and they've been handed out to the school board members, but they're not electronically on the in the agenda.
Where is that at?
It was handed out to you. It's this one that's in red. Okay. So we're perhaps we can dispense with looking at the original county school board norms, and we can have Mrs. Carlinio speak to her draft, and after that I could speak to my draft. Does that sound like a plausible way ahead?
Where is Ms. Carlinio's draft?
So Ms. Carlinio's information was included with the couple of things that I added. So it's a combination of both of those.
Yeah, I'm a little
But I can, it is,
So no, the one called. Do you have the
I've got the one we had from April, and then I've got the draft too.
Okay, the draft 2 is Gloria's. Because what is in there are the line out, I'm thinking that's the case. The line in, line outs are the ones that Gloria has suggested. There might be one, there might be one or more that aren't Gloria's, I'm not sure.
Okay, so yours is not electronic, yours is printed.
That's correct, yeah.
so Chairman Barlow, the draft that's on board docs is a combination. You had one change, I had a change, Mr. Gutshaw had a change, and Gloria had maybe one or two changes
Okay.
that is in the.
Okay, so I stand corrected. So it is, it contains several suggested
Yes,
up to today.
yes, correct.
Lori, you want to take the lead in talking about this, because I think most of these changes are yours. You can skip over the others.
Hold on, I need to look up, I have a computer, let me just look it up. Is that from the?
Yeah.
But this is in the board docs? Yeah, give me a second, let me look it up here. Let's see.
while Gloria's taking a look at that, Dr. Shepherd, you indicated that several of us had suggested changes that were included here that were not. Gloria, we could speak to those, perhaps to begin with, and then finish up with Gloria. So let me, I'm going to kind of scroll through here, and the first item that was suggested as a change is under school board meetings. Second bullet says the chair will continuously, and my recommendation was to make that continually, making sure that we don't assume that there's a never-ending polling, but that it does happen in a continual or regular way. That's the only one I suggested. Dr. Shepherd, did you had added one in?
So the next bullet point under that, I believe, was either, it may have been Ms. Carlenio, that all school board members shall have until noon on the day that the agenda for a meeting is made public at 3 p.m. to include items to the agenda for information purposes. Neither the chair nor the vice chair will have the discretion to keep items submitted by this deadline out of the agenda. Only the member submitting the item may withdraw it from consideration. I
Okay,
believe
so
that came from Ms. Carlenio.
Right, okay, so, did you mention earlier that you had made an
I
insertion?
did.
So let's just go to yours,
Yeah.
and we'll go back, and Gloria can hit each of hers in order.
So on page 2, under closed session, my recommendation was board members agree to maintain confidentiality regarding all confidential matters discussed in closed session, and then the bullet points, the first 2 bullet points, confidential information shared in closed session will not be disclosed to the public or media. And then the second bullet point, to maintain confidentiality, electronic devices will not be used during closed session. And the third bullet point, I believe, is Ms. Carlenio's, all closed sessions will be recorded.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so she'll speak to that.
And then one more, I
Go ahead.
added
No,
attorney.
we're trying to round them up, keep going.
I added attorney accessibility, and I just said this section will outline the process by which school board members can seek legal guidance from school board attorney. This section will be developed in collaboration with the school board attorney.
Okay.
So,
And did you mention that Mr. Gutschall had any input here?
yeah, it was just one
word.
at the bottom. It's page 4. It had his and the superintendent or their designee.
Okay. Okay, Gloria, you want to pick it up from there?
Yeah, I just trying to look for it because, so my concern was with the agenda setting is that generally we have, and I've spoken to other people and throughout the years that members have had until the Friday before the Friday before the week that we have a meeting, before the agenda is made public, as the deadline usually to submit new items. And the reason is because sometimes things just come up at the last minute, and we want to make sure that we can include those. And those are in line with the statute that actually says that it only, the only requirement is that first it says that every board member is allowed to submit items, but then it also says, I'm trying to look for it, that basically you have to do it before the agenda is made public. And I'm reading actually from Section B, School Board Governance and Operations. It says the preparation of the proposed agenda shall be the responsibility of the school board chair with the assistance of the superintendent. Any member of the school board may submit terms for inclusion for the proposed agenda, a copy of the proposed agenda and an agenda packets and materials is made available for inspection to the public. At the same time, the documents are, sorry, it's just really small print, are furnished to the school board members unless the materials are exempt under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. So I believe this is how it's always been done, and I think that's the best way to have a deadline. I have no problem if you want to have, an agenda-setting meeting where you kind of come up with the general idea of how, when we're going to be doing budget, when we're going to be doing this or that. That's fine, but my thing is that we always have to leave it open in case things do show up. And the best way to do it is kind of the way that we always understood it, was that you had until that Friday before you actually set up the agenda. Now, I have no problem if you want to do it, noon on Friday, or even if you want to do it, close up business on Thursday. But basically just leave it open so that if things come up, I mean, we had this problem that last semester when we were getting a lot of letters and a lot of parents that were concerned about the attendance policy. So we need to discuss that as soon as possible, or things that have deadlines, that we should be able to include those in there. So that was why I submitted that, and I'm trying to see exactly where it is in this draft, because it talks about
It's under agenda setting, the third bullet. Is that what you're looking for? She'll have
Yeah.
until noon on the day of the agenda meeting?
yes, so yes, that's basically all I wanted to do, and I'm trying to see where that deadline is on Friday.
It says until noon on the day that the agenda for a meeting is made public at 3 PM.
I just can't even
It's
see
not that.
Oh.
That's,
Okay.
No, you're looking at my,
Oh, so this is yours. Oh, okay. I thought this was the one that you were getting. Okay. So yeah, so that's basically why I did that, and that was this is not what I should be looking at. So that was my idea with that. Along with that, I would like, and I think I did propose that at some point, that I think we need to start also labeling who's doing what when we propose any kind of agenda, who's the member proposing it, so that if we have any questions or if we want to know, who's doing this, that we know who to go to, as opposed to just leave it without any kind of identification.
Okay, so the one called identification of all requests for information, that's an addition.
That was in addition to that, just
Okay.
kind of label all of those requests, so
Okay.
we know who's doing what.
time limits.
Then we
was
had the
next
time
one.
limits was, it was just an idea of if we wanted to shorten the meetings, or we want to make sure that everybody has the same amount of time. I mean, we've had this in the past, and nobody's really taking time. I know personally, I've been cut off twice when I'm making my remarks. So I wanted to make sure that we either leave it open for anybody who wants to talk for however long we're going to allow them to talk, or we should just limit it and then have somebody actually taking the time, so that everybody has the same amount of time when they're speaking.
And the last
And
one was
then-
all closed sessions will be recorded. I think that's.
Yeah, so the closed
Yeah, I think
sessions,
it was the last one.
well, I'm concerned that right now, I know there are things that are private or they're under legal counsel that we cannot be talking about, and that's completely understandable. Yet at the same time, there are times that we have been, and I can think of even one right now, which I can't go into the details, but that we were getting advice or counsel from somebody else, and it's actually going to be influential on possible future actions. And unfortunately, because we don't have any recording of that, we don't really have any way to go back and use that as a board in any future actions that may be happening. Now, those would not be open to the public. Those would just be used for us as needed. And I know that there are some other boards that actually do that. So it was a matter of, I've been told that we could either have the clerk actually take minutes of what's going on, or we could just record it, and that way we have it as a source of information for the future. And I think that was it, right?
I think that's the last edition you had, okay. Okay, anything else, Gloria?
Now, and again, I wanted to say, with regards to the first point with the agenda setting, I understand that there's a concern if somebody needs help with somebody else drafting the policy or the school board making some kind of research, and that's fine. What we're talking about here is putting it just even for information, which is kind of what we've done with other stuff. We're not, it doesn't really mean that we need to be discussing it and voting it at the next meeting. It just means that this item has been brought up, so that people know that this is something that we're going to be talking about. In my case, I usually do my own research and draft my own policy. So if I have it ready, I can just go ahead and introduce it. If I need help or if I need the school board to get some information, then it would just be an opportunity to let them know that that's something that we need to work on, and then whoever needs to look into that can look into that. But I just think we should have, and God bless you, a deadline that is the same one every single time, as opposed to having to look at a sheet of paper and see, oh, when was the agenda setting meeting? I think it's a lot easier for us as members to know, okay, the Friday before the Thursday meeting is when we have the deadline. And if I may be a reminder that this is the problem that we had in 2020, was that that wasn't followed. So I just think it'd be better to just go ahead and make it uniform so that we always know what the deadline is.
Okay. The draft that I have had distributed to the school board members has my suggested changes in red, which is a little misleading, because if I move something out of sequence but kept it the way it was, it still shows up as a change. So everything that's in red isn't necessarily something that I put in as a change, but and as we go through it, you'll see that I did probably just, or maybe have just shifted it around. So let me begin by saying I believe that in looking at the school board requirements under Virginia Code and under the powers and duties of SED, and also the policies that are in power now. I looked at the school board norms and realized that there was a lot of kind of squishy stuff in there, and it's some of it was subjective, and I actually value some of that subjectivity because we're talking about norms, which is the way one would normally do business. And so we can't necessarily put a lot of sharp edges around them, but we can try to be as specific as we can. And with lessons learned over the past few years, I did this exercise with that in mind. So so the first thing I did was indicate that maybe that after we have read and agreed to this, not this, but our final document, that in that spirit of collegiality, that we sign and date that we understand that this sets the school board norms for us. So there's nothing under really change under our responsibilities, how we govern. There used to be a phrase that said board members agree to being involved to our individual level of comfort. I'm not sure exactly what that meant, but it ended with to operate in a collegial and friendly manner, and will strive for consensus. And I put consensus agreements in work and closed sessions, rather than the majority rule, which is the norm for our regular school board meetings. Understanding that in school board meetings, we are under the, not control of, but we're under the guidance of Robert's rules. But in other meetings, as we did tonight, what we try to do is try to come to consensus. I did put down here a new section on Robert's Rules of Orders, because it speaks specifically to some of the comments that Mrs. Carlinio just made. So, for instance, discussion under action items, each member is allowed up to 10 minutes to speak, and not just the first person who speaks. So I think we need to default to the Roberts rules, which allow each member to speak up to 10 minutes. And I do, I actually included in there that be adjudicated by an appointed timekeeper, which we have started to do. Also, there's a understanding that no speaker speaks twice until every member has the opportunity to speak once. On occasion, and I take Gloria's point, the board may want to limit subsequent discussion to 5 minutes, but I would suggest that would have to be determined by the board on a case-by-case basis. I think it was, Gloria, was it you said that a member may reserve time or yield that time to other members, but that's not permitted under Robert's rules. So there is no yielding time to other members. And then there was a portion in there in which stakeholders request information, which is I did not change at all, but I changed it slightly to indicate the stakeholder addresses the board as opposed to I think it said citizen or something other than that, since we have recently changed our rules to only allow stakeholders to speak. So that remains the same. In the closed session, I concur that board members agree to maintain confidentiality. Information shared in a closed session will be not disclosed to any entity, and to maintain confidentiality, electronic devices will not be used. We had a lot of discussion this year about how to bring an item to the board for future action. So I wanted to make sure that was captured rather precisely. So there's an introductory paragraph there that isn't significant, only minutely changed. But it does say that the chair will contact members of the school board regarding potential agenda concerns to determine if there are any requests to include an item or report for an upcoming or future meeting. And alternatively, board members can individually submit agenda requests to the school board chair. So it can go either way. That's an addition. The chair, in consultation with the superintendent, may accept the recommendation or suggest another avenue of communications. I note that the last third of this document sets forth a rather neat set of ways in which the school board communicates with various members of our school system. And not everything is a policy item. Sometimes items can be resolved by school board members talking to other members of the staff, teachers, administrators, the superintendent, and those, sometimes the chairs, I've done several times, will suggest, I don't think this is a policy item, I think this is something that I would suggest you talk to the superintendent about. And so I take that responsibility on myself because it is indeed the responsibility of the school board chair with the assistance of the superintendent to prepare the agenda. There's another bullet there that said the chair will continually poll members regarding their desire to include the topics. Additionally, school board member comments during work session or regular meetings, a board may present his or her question. I'm not sure we've done this enough, but I think we've started to do it. And this is not a change. This is what's already in there. That a board member may present his or her question or idea to the board. At that point, discussion can ensue, and following discussion, if the superintendent, if there's a consensus to include the topic, the board will direct the superintendent to pursue the topic, and then the superintendent will keep the board apprised of its progress. The chair will coordinate with the member who raised the issue and in conjunction with the superintendent, determine if the topic is for information or action. The issue will then be scheduled accordingly based on relevance, urgency, workload, and other factors. Now, the final bullet there is is where Gloria and I probably diverge, which is to allow proper time to consider the nature and scope of the agenda request. It should be provided to the chair, vice chair, superintendent at least a week prior to the agenda setting session. Maybe a week is too long because there are things that pop up, but I think having items just dropped on the agenda setting session that very day is counter to having a good preparation meeting and being able to prepare well for a meeting at which we're trying to set an agenda for the next month and even beyond with information items, action items, and so forth. So I think it would be not a good use of our time to kind of have to plan everything at the last second when last minute requests are coming in for agenda items just as we're holding the meeting. One thing that I've pulsed some of the other divisions around the state, and I've added this particular recommendation on policy and oversight, that since the core responsibilities of the school board relate to the development of policies and providing oversight of our school laws, our core methodologies relate to deliberate planning and information analysis. So we're charged by law to secure as full information as possible about the conduct of the public schools. That's what we're each individually called to do. So I think our objectives should be focused on reaching a clear understanding of the macro challenges facing our schools as opposed to the more involved day-to-day operations, which are more properly the concerns of the superintendent. So with that in mind, I'm suggesting when an agenda item is brought forward, which indicates that it might be an issue with policy ramifications, it should undergo an evaluation within the current set of policies. And to do that, that agenda item will likely be passed to the policy committee to provide analysis and context regarding the Virginia Code and policies. And that policy committee will work with the member requesting the agenda item in developing a recommendation for the items in this position. I note that we have had several policy items the last few months where we didn't rush to judgment, but we kind of hurried and maybe didn't get the full import of what concerns there were with the use of cell phones or discipline, or more recently attendance policies, and I believe a more studied approach would probably help us there. Freedom of Information Act requests. Members of the school board individually may avail themselves of FOIA requests, as do other members of the community, but with rates commensurate belonging to an educational organization. So if one of our members wants to FOIA, that's fine, but they can take advantage of the discount at making that FOIA request, but that only when the corporate body, through a majority voter consensus, agrees to a FOIA request, should it be done with no charge assessed. And I've got something in here by about the attire hired by the school board, which I think is essentially the one that's already there. And reiterate under that first bullet that the school board has a responsibility to develop and propose procedures pertaining to the methodology of interaction between school board members and the attorney, directly with the attorney, prior to the employment of that attorney. And I think
Guess we could remove.
yeah, we should take that out. Yes. It was Mr. Kutchall just pointed out that there's a reference in the old one to VSBA conference, which I think we'd like to see expunged as well. I'm sorry it took time to do that, but I just wanted to make sure that you had an idea of what motivated me to suggest some of those changes. So we're certainly open to any further discussion on this topic.
I was just gonna say again, I mean, this is the way it's been done for many years, so I don't understand why we're all of a sudden changing it. And I didn't, what was your recommendation again for accepting items at the agenda setting meeting, or?
I mean, no, I mean, the items can come up, school board member comments, you can pass them to me when I, through the school board clerk or whatever, ask you for your, so any number of ways you can bring me.
Well, what's the deadline? Because I guess my concern is, I remember a year ago when we first talked about this, I mean, you had said that, you know, the chair and the vice chair don't really have any prerogative over this, that they're just leading the meeting. So, so what we've, for the first half of the last year, I was introducing every policy that I introduced, and I introduced most of them, were introduced by that Friday before the Thursday. It wasn't until this last October when all of a sudden we were told, no, you have to talk about it in the board member meeting, and then you have to do it by the agenda setting meeting. So that was the first time I ever heard that. Again, we were talking about things that were, that had a deadline at the time. And we're talking about the things that the community was bringing up, and we're talking about the voter registration policy that I wanted to introduce. So there was certainly a deadline, a time limit to that. So that was, again, the first time that I ever heard about that. And I started asking other people, and people who've been in the board before, or people who were involved in the 2020 hoopla, and they all said the same thing. They all said, well, no, you always have until that Friday to set up the agenda.
So did we change that?
That's, on October we did.
No.
In October we did.
You said quite a bit that I want to respond to. So we've had this discussion a year ago. This didn't just start. And I believe every policy request that you put forward has been accepted by the chair. But we did have a bow wave of a lot of issues that came up all at once. And it was kind of a new day, because not that many policy issues came up under the old board. It's just the way it was. So when we have requirements for things that need to be policies, or not just policies, just find out about them, find out what our next steps are, how we can resolve them, and so forth. We had a three-part process, which we talked about, which is bring the topic up. We get an information brief that the superintendent provides from the staff or from administrators, teachers. And then after that information is kind of assimilated and analyzed, then we as a board decide what the action is based on that. And it could be that we refine a regulation. And that's basically what we did with the attendance thing. We didn't pass a new policy, but we reviewed the regulations, so we understood. And when we thought that there was a cell phone policy that was required, and you were probably the thought leader on that, then we decided there was a policy necessary, and we drove ahead with it. But there was still due process of getting the information, making sure that it was scheduled, and that the community, school board members who are charged with gaining all this information, we're charged with finding this stuff out, had a chance to do an analysis and find it out, so that we didn't rush to judgment. I know of several divisions that actually lost the cell phone policy because they ran to it, and then some good considerations about why maybe you shouldn't pass it that way came up, and the cell phone policy lost. And so these things can happen. And so asking for a gestation period of these things while we investigate them, I think is smart for an organization that does overwatch the way the school board does.
But I'm not disputing that at all, or questioning that. My whole point is, right now, what I'm trying to decide is, what is the deadline that we have? And if we're going to continue doing what we've done all along, or what this board has done all along, of having that Friday at noon be the final deadline for that, again, nobody's taking away, what we're talking about is, we're gonna put that on a Friday, and then at the next meeting, it's gonna be on the informational agenda. Then the following meeting, we're gonna talk about it. Then the following meeting, so we're already talking about 2 months that we're gonna be talking about that.
We've streamlined it quite a bit. And the point is, the agenda setting session is a time when the superintendent, who has thought about these things that are happening, the chairman, I've been receiving stuff, the vice chair, we come in and we kind of put this thing together and ready for prime time right then. That's not what we need, new input. You know, we needed input the week before, 2 weeks before, so that when we went to the agenda setting session, we were prepared. And not waiting till that very meeting where we have to come up with the agenda to get our input. It just doesn't make sense to get the input at the exact moment that you're going to design the output. We needed time, we need time to get ready to have a good agenda setting session.
What makes no sense, I mean, it's not like we're bringing all these policies every single time. What makes no sense is for us to tie our hands and say, no, we cannot accept anything until you talk about it at the board, which, by the way, Mr. Treat never talked about his policy that he wanted to bring today. So if we're going to be following that line of reasoning, then we should not even have put this in the agenda for last time, much less today. Because again, you said that we needed to put that as a requirement. Last October, what we had talked about were things that we had already talked about in previous board member comments. So I had talked about it, and he had talked about it as well, and yet we were told, well, no, you have to wait until the agenda setting meeting. So, you know, it's very confusing. I understand, again, I have no problem with having the agenda setting meetings to put the masterpiece of what we're going to be doing in terms of, we're going to be talking about budget, we're going to be talking about, you know, teachers, we're going to be talking about all that. That's fine. But it makes no sense whatsoever for us as a board to tie our hands and say, we cannot absolutely bring up anything else that comes that is timely or that the constituents want or that is an emergency, that we have to wait until the next agenda setting meeting to kind of propose it, and then at the board member comments to talk about it, and then finally be able to put it in the agenda at the following month to start the timeline, to start a timeline of, okay, now we're going to put it in the informational agenda. Now we're going to talk about it. Now we're going to vote on it. I mean, we're talking about, we're handicapping ourselves to deal with issues that could be coming that are imperative for us to deal with right away.
Well, see, we have never stopped an issue. The issues have rolled. I mean, we have, well, I'll just defer to people who've been around there. We have probably discussed and taken for action probably more policy items than any school board in probably the last 6 or 8 years. They've come through. None of them have been stopped, none have been steamrolled, none have been vetoed. They've all gotten their innings, and we have had a chance to discuss this. If anything, we've kind of supercharged them to get a bunch through. Now, when I put this in here, I said that, of course, there always are chances for something that has to be prioritized. It's happening now. It's an emergency, whatever. Not so much with us because we are the school board. Okay, we're not operations. Okay, but if there is something that happens, then we reserve the right to move it up. We reserve the right to take it and take it in an expeditious way. So we have that capability, and so certainly we can do it. And we are a school board corporately. If we decide to do something by majority vote, we'll do it, because that's the only way we're legally allowed to move forward. So we can do it, and we can. And there are so many. There are at least 3, 4 different ways that it can get before the board as an agenda item, that it shouldn't be any problem at all
So
to
where's
get it
that
on.
exception?
So let me finish the last thing and then I'll go right back to you. So, so if we can get this information, the things that you guys want to do, I mean, the school board members want to do, 4 or 5 days ahead of time, so that we can smooth out the meeting and not have to deal with it after the superintendent's already probably, she's pretty good about having a set of agenda things that need our cognizance, or at least our attention. So just to have a good meeting, a well-planned meeting, we need to have these things in in some degree of, ahead of time, so we can put it on the
And I've not
agenda.
disputed that. I've
Well,
said
that's
that
all we
several
need to do.
times.
That's all it says.
But what I'm saying, okay, so that, there's no problem with that, but right now, right now, what is the deadline if I want to put something in the next agenda? In March, say in March I want to bring something up, when's my deadline?
I'm suggesting 7 days.
So 7 days from what? What day?
From before the
The meeting?
agenda setting meeting.
Before the meeting or the agenda setting meeting?
The agenda setting meeting.
Okay, so if I want to bring something in March, what's my deadline?
Well,
Did we already set that one?
is the March,
I think it,
No, we were just told today, March is set February 28th, this Friday.
So there's 2 March. We have 2 March meetings, right?
the agenda
By
setting
what we
meeting
were
is
emailed
February
today.
28th
Mhm.
for the March 13th and the March 24th meeting.
So we haven't set that one yet.
and I don't,
Even right now, we're all trying to figure out what the deadline is. Whereas it'd be so much easier to say, and that's fine, if you can say priority, give it by this, but if we just had a date, every single time, every single month, that we know by this, 7 days before the meeting, you can submit that. I mean, I don't know, if you want to make it Thursday or Friday before the meeting, I'm fine with that. Problem is, for example, in October, the agenda for October and November, you guys set it up in September. So when Mike and I came up with this issue, yes, when we came up with this stuff, we were told, oh no, the agenda setting meeting was September 22nd for both October and November. So that's why it had to be bumped until January. So in January, we were talking about the elections because, the elections that happened in November. The voter registration policy that we passed, that I had already submitted back in October. And the idea was to actually have it passed before the elections in case anybody had any doubts about what we were going to do with the voter registration. That didn't get talked about and passed until after the elections in January.
So let me respond with 3 things. One is, you don't have to wait until the week of the agenda setting session. Anytime you have an item, all you have to do is let me know, let the superintendent know.
What about things that
We'll
come
bring
up?
it up. Let me finish.
We already
Okay.
know that.
So you don't have to wait for that deadline.
Sure.
That's just a suspense date.
Right.
So if you want to come in a month ahead, 2 weeks ahead, that's fine. Now, that particular issue was one I thought might be one that was time sensitive. So I went to the superintendent and said, maybe this is one we need to fast track. And she said, the way that I'm trying to find words, I'll try to be fair to you. The way that we regulate this in school now is they can't do that anyway. That it was prohibited at that point to do that. So I'm saying to myself, we have a sequence of things. This one is not one that has to be passed this time, but we put it on the agenda and it works its way through. And it did. And it went through, I think, 6-0, and there you go. It's a success story. But it allows us to do deliberate planning and to be able to bring proper information to bear on it. And you can bring it anytime you want, and we'll accept it as a topic.
For the next meeting. So I can bring it
No.
up. See, so that's the point.
No.
I get it.
You cannot insist on something you bring that day. It's going to happen at the next meeting. You
But
can't
that's the way
insist
it's
on that.
always been.
I don't,
No.
has it always been that way?
Yes, it has been this way.
The
Yes, it has.
The Friday of the
Someone
agenda
that's-
setting meeting, we had until noon that day to call you up and say, hey, Dennis, this is what I'm hearing, I need it informational.
No, that's what you assumed, because I sent you an email to that effect, and you said you understood.
You know how,
So just a
Well,
second.
let's ask the people that have been here for years. Can we get somebody?
well, can I just add something? Do you know what happened in 2020?
Yeah, I'm aware.
Okay, you're aware. So you remember what the problem was? The problem was that they were expecting to have that agenda setting, that agenda already released on that Friday. It wasn't until the last minute that they went ahead and released it, and they had already put the name change for the following week.
Right?
Because that's the way they always did it.
Which is what we're trying to keep from happening.
No, but that would be for us to do for an information. So the problem with them was that they went for a
Sure.
vote.
And
So that's the
so-
difference.
And so we'll get it on the information docket. We'll get it out there.
Well,
It doesn't,
okay, then that's
but you
understood.
understand, that doesn't mean for action the next time. It means information, and then action the next time.
I've never said that I wanted it for action. We've said all along
Each
for,
one,
in fact,
and that's
I
why we
believe-
decided it in January when it was put in October.
In fact, I believe that when I had my draft for this, I actually said that it would be to put it in the informational agenda. I never said that I wanted it for action. It's supposed to be for the informational agenda.
Well, this is nice and tight now, so you should be real happy with it.
No, it's not nice and tight because it's not
Well, you
saying
did-
that we can do that before the Friday. It's saying that we have to do it,
No, you
that
never.
we have to have this with
No,
us at
no.
all times.
Anytime you want. But you can't give it to us the day
But
of the
before,
agenda and.
you have to do it
yes,
anytime before then.
You got it.
That's not the way it's always been.
You-
So the point
That's not
is,
true.
oh Dennis, you,
Dr. Shepherd, could you clarify that?
Clarify.
Was it not that as long as you got it to you guys before noon, the Friday that you set the agenda, it would make it onto the informational for the next meeting?
So the agenda setting meeting for this coming, for the March 13th meeting is February the 28th. You're talking about that Friday, because I think you're talking about February 28th, but I think Gloria is talking about March the 6th.
It was always March the 6th. It was always that Friday.
Friday before.
No, the agenda setting, not as long as I've been here.
And that's been as long as we've been here.
Yeah. It's always, the agenda setting meeting was when all of the stuff was added to the agenda.
But every single policy that I introduced this last year, I did it going by that Friday deadline before the meeting, and it was accepted.
It's accepted as a topic, and we put it into the schedule, and it cranked its way right on through.
Right, so why can't we keep on doing that?
We are.
No, we're not. We didn't do it in October. That's what happened. That was the problem. That's why we stood here for 45 minutes that one time when the people were here, because we had talked about it before in other board member comments. Mike had talked about his stuff, board member comments. In fact, that room was full of people who were talking about the whole attendance issue. So we tried to add it in October for the November one, and we were told, no, you cannot do it because the agenda setting meeting had been already done in September for both October and November. So we were not able to do it for that meeting. We had to wait until, I don't remember if it was December or January.
That happens. It happens that there are schedules that we want, and other, not, yours doesn't take precedence over everybody else's.
It's not that mine takes precedence over anybody else's. It's that we should all have one agenda, one deadline that we can all follow. And if things come up, for example, that idea with the voter registration came because, it came in October through the SBMA and through the middle resolution, because this was a problem that other counties were having. And Loudoun County was one of them, Fairfax County was another one, and we had all these people talking about how that was a real problem. So middle resolution had actually asked us, if the school boards start passing these policies, maybe we can ask our legislators to actually enact this into legislation. And that's why we said, well, let's go ahead and make it as quickly as we can, and I'm thankful that we have Dr. Shepherd here that was already doing something along those lines. But what if she weren't here? What if it was a different board superintendent that actually
I
didn't
would
do
have
that?
ascertained that. That's why it didn't
But
take
see,
precedence.
but this is not how you do things. You don't just do, if this happens, you do this, if this happens, you do that. No, you have rules. You have deadlines, and you follow those deadlines and the rules, and then everybody has to be able to understand it. Everybody should be able to tell off the top of their heads, what's the deadline for me to submit some policy? I shouldn't have to be thinking, oh my gosh, I need to call Cheryl. What are the deadlines? Oh my gosh, okay, pass the deadlines.
I don't know why you, if you want to put something before the group, you don't even have to worry about what day it is. You can just call me and say, I want it on the agenda. I'm not going to tell you it's going to happen the next 6 days or the next 30 weeks. That's why, if it's a policy item, I think it needs to go to policy committee, find out the ramifications from it, and make sure that it has its fair hearing. The school board chair is responsible for setting the agenda. And I've done the best I could at having an efficient way of taking everybody's input, making sure that nothing gets left behind or doesn't skip the line. And to do so, I regularly check with the superintendent about what is imminent, and with the rest of you about what we need to do to keep the wheels turning here. Okay? You don't like that? But you've been the recipient of the largest largesse because yours are the ones, yes?
Largesse, I've been working. I've been actually doing policy.
Yes, you received the largesse of your request to have these things met in a universal 100% way. They've all been
Yes.
adjudicated.
And all that, the first half of the year, it'll happen the same way that we thought it was gonna happen, if we do it by that Friday before. And then all of a sudden, in October, we were kind of shocked to find out, well, no, you had to do it before this agenda setting meeting. Again, in October, we were told in September, it was the one even for November. So again, what you're saying is pretty much, as a chair, you're just gonna decide whenever these dates are, and that's the only date that we have,
One thing
and
I
that's
don't
it.
like is you constantly tell me, in other words, here are my words. If you,
No.
no.
That's exactly what I just said.
If you want to use my words. Don't tell me
Aren't those your
another.
words? Aren't those your words?
That's the schedule.
Yes, so
Yes.
every time, we just have to look at that, and then that's the
No,
only time.
anytime before that, anytime.
Okay, that's okay, guys.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on school board norms?
I find
Okay,
it
so-
interesting on the FOIA request that all of a sudden we're gonna be hit with FOIA request, charges. Is that sparked by a recent FOIA request that took place?
Yeah.
Also, the electronic devices, I mean, all of us have been guilty of using our phones. Some of us have used laptops in closed session. You guys can do what you want with this. I got a daughter in college, I got a son that plays high school sports. Y'all do what you want. I'm gonna continue conducting myself the way I always have.
We'll see. We'll see.
If I can add something to that, because I did talk about, to the FOIA council on this, and they said that there's basically, that other boards have tried to do that in the past, but it usually comes down to a question of what authority the board has, if any, to enforce such an agreement. And I even looked at other boards, and nobody that I've seen tells their members they cannot bring their computer to do their work.
I think it's something we need to find out legally if we're permitted to do it. I think you're absolutely right. We need legal clarification. I agree.
I have the one from FOIA council. If you want to
Okay.
ask somebody else, go
That's
ahead.
fine.
But yeah, there's no
Anything
way-
else on the board norms?
I'd like to pose a question on taping the closed session. I'm not opening up another can of worms, I'm just asking a question. Do you think there would ever come a time when you would not want to tape a closed session because of the sensitivity of the issue? And I note what you said, Ms. Corlinio, about it would be there for us, but us changes with every 2 years. So I'm posing this in the terms of maybe there should be a, yes, we'll tape it, but maybe by majority vote, knowing what's on the closed, maybe you wouldn't want to. Maybe you would take a vote and we will not, I'm just asking.
You're allowed to record it yourself.
Well, I know I can, but I wouldn't do it. I don't know how to begin with.
Well, like I said, that is something that we are, each of us, allowed to do it, whether we, regardless. The other thing is, when it comes to, there's certain information, like the student, mostly the student information, that cannot be disclosed to the public anyways. So, I mean, that could be something that you do not record anything that has to do with the students or anything like that. I have no problem with that. I'm more concerned every time we have discussions, especially like with attorneys. And the attorneys will say certain things, and then we don't have anything to either back it up or listen to it again, or if somebody heard it differently, we have no way of going back into that. And I can tell you right now, we're already facing that issue coming up. That I can't talk about it, but we can talk about it in closed session.
Anything further on board norms? We'll be taking that for action at our next regular school board meeting. Two point four deals with the policy I and B, teaching about controversial issues. Dr. Shepherd, you want to give us some background, please?
I'm sorry, can I just say something real quick? Because this is the amendment that Mr. Street already was the one who introduced it. And he wasn't here at the last meeting to introduce it and talk about it. He's not here to introduce it and talk about it again. So I think we should just go ahead and move this to the next meeting for us to discuss, because I don't see how we can possibly be talking about an issue that the person who's introducing it is not here to explain and defend.
I would have to agree.
What do you think?
I think as long as it's on action as well in the same
No,
meeting.
it should not be an action.
Why?
No, because right now, we just talked about this. Was this already put in the agenda setting meeting for this meeting?
What?
Tom's agenda? Tom's amendment, I mean, was that discussed at your agenda setting meeting?
Yes.
It was?
Yes.
Because I heard about it for the first time just a week and a half, a few days before that. Well, then if that's the case, then it should be an informational agenda at the next one, because we have not had any discussion. We haven't even talked about it at any of the public hearings. So we should have people be able to listen to this. So I would like to have the proof that it was indeed introduced before the agenda setting meetings. If you can please provide that to me, I'd really appreciate it. And then I'm going to move that it be for the informational agenda at the next meeting. It cannot be for action because we have not discussed it and we have not debated it in front of everybody.
Tom hasn't even presented it.
Yeah, he hasn't even presented it and talked about it and defended it.
I could speak to the issue, but you make a point that I know Tom has been particularly interested in this. I'd like to have him present. And I would not have a problem with moving this to the informational agenda at our next meeting. I would like to say one thing before we move away from this, though, is that after the discussion that we had initially about this, when we passed it, 6-0, there was a concern that, wondering how we would be able to revisit it, talk about it, and I called our parliamentarian, and he suggested that we either reconsider or discuss it at our next meeting, which is why I put it on the agenda. It was because our parliamentarian suggested that was the way to go about it. But now I'm thinking it probably would require an amendment to some other policy, even if it were to go through. So I don't personally have a problem with taking another look at it in an informational setting before we move to agenda. Does anybody disagree with that? I mean,
Well, I just have a point of order, is that what Tom has added here as an amendment doesn't even go with the policy that he is trying to amend.
that's part of the discussion we'll have, yes, yeah.
No, it isn't, because this section that we have, that we're talking about, is about instruction, and this amendment is not about instruction. So, given that, it's not simply an amendment to a policy that we already have. This is basically a completely different policy that would probably go against the Youngkin model, and that's what we would have to be amending at this point.
Well, see, here's it doesn't change what I just said, but let me, this is what it says in policy. When a proposed action of the school board initiated by either by a school board member or administration affects existing school board policies, the existing policy and regulation, if any, shall be referenced so that the effect of the new action will be clear. So I take your point that the ramifications of adding something else to this other instruction will impact other policies, and we should be cognizant of that, and that should be part of the discussion.
Yes, and I mean, the main part is gonna have to be, where does it go? Because it does
Yeah.
not go in the.
Couldn't
in the
agree more.
discussion. And
Well,
did-
I wouldn't go that far, but I would agree that we have to decide where it goes.
Well, here, and I did have this for the next time that we do talk about it, because I did have that prepared. I didn't know that Tom was gonna be leaving.
Would you rather wait until Tom's present to present?
I already gave him one of that. Yeah,
Oh.
no, but you guys can start reading about it. I mean, it's the same thing. Well, yeah, maybe I should just,
That's up to you. I had something that I quickly typed up based on a conversation Tom and I
Okay,
had.
okay, so,
I would rather wait on mine until Tom's present.
okay, so I think we do it one way or the other. Either we get back with Tom, we do the information, or we start to bleed all over it now, whatever you want.
no, it was about giving this information. So if you guys can bring this up for the next meeting, I'll be talking about this at the next meeting when we actually talk about this.
I mean, it's up to you, Chairman Barlow. I can either pass this out or I can hold off until the next meeting.
I would
Tom
rather-
does have a copy of this.
I would rather you hold off on it, but as you please, as long as we don't discuss it now, you can hand it up, okay.
So do we need to make a motion to move that for information agenda in March?
I will take it upon myself as the chair to recommend that to the superintendent at our agenda setting session.
But I think we need to take it out of the agenda, don't we?
Yeah,
So we need to make a motion right now to take it off the
Table
agenda. To table it?
Do we table it?
We don't need to do anything with it, we just move
no,
on.
no, it's,
Right?
no, so if it is on the agenda for,
Today.
no, for March, for decision,
13th.
we need to move it to the informational agenda as opposed to the decision agenda for our next meeting. And
So we need to make. a
is there any
motion.
objection if I, as the chair, make that recommendation to the superintendent that we move it from, based on a consensus of the group tonight, that we move it from action item next regular board meeting to an informational item?
But I think we still need to make a motion to take it out of this one.
I think we've discussed it, my opinion. It's been discussed briefly, so there'll be minutes that go under this particular section. So I don't think it has to be
think we don't have
removed
to- okay.
because we had a little bit of discussion. We didn't have, yeah. But that's my opinion.
You're right, I mean, it's a placeholder, but at least sets us up so we can have an information session or action item, or not action item, but item in our March meeting. School board member comments.
You gonna start? You're not gonna start?
I'm drawing a blank.
Well, I can talk a little bit. So I was gonna have some comments on this policy, but we'll talk about it at the next one. I did want to say on Friday, I was able to go to, actually, you know what? I'm gonna talk about this maybe at the hearing. I guess it doesn't matter. I'll just talk about it now. Dolly W. Robinson had a breakfast, breakfast for the school board members, and I was able to go there on Friday. And I want to thank the principal, Tara Mason, and also Alicia Billy, who's actually the counselor. They did a great program. They had 5 kids from their the 5th grade class that were part of the Positive Peer Leadership team, and they did a great job. They actually did a great presentation, and then they did a little tour of the school and told me all the great things that they are doing and the things that they like, and I really like to see this. I guess Miss Billy has actually only been there for 2 years, and she kind of hit the ground running and did this program, and I think they have about 24 kids right now. And they're really emphasizing leadership skills, and the kids get to do the presentation and answer questions. And I was very impressed with these 5th graders. So kudos to her, and I hope that they can grow the program even more.
Thank you.
I was pleased to hear the cautious acceptance of option C. I was a long time coming around to that. The reasons the superintendent and I talked at our meeting a couple of months ago. Sandy Hook is at 97% capacity. As you noted, Mr. Rickard, tomorrow there will be new units going up there on Hubbs Hill. They're starting the site preparation out there behind the 7-Eleven, which you have noted. And I know that not every unit will have, you know, children enrolling, but you know there will be some. And I'm also concurring with Mr. Chairman, the hard work that went in for the budget preparation. And now I have to digest all this. And I didn't get instructions on the digesting of that.
It's a team
Thank you.
effort.
Thank you.
Team effort.
Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Carlenio, for bringing up the School Board Appreciation Breakfast. To all the administration, all the staff that's reached out to us and invited us to special events at the schools. I did not get to return every single invite, every single email, but I do want to extend a thank you to our staff. You guys are the ones that make us look good. You're the reason we're here. You guys are doing the real work. And even though it was School Board Appreciation Month, I appreciate you, the school board office staff, the staff that's in the buildings that I'll call the boots on the ground. Y'all are with the kids day in and day out, and you guys are the ones that deserve the kudos. So thank you to all the people that reached out and invited us to breakfast or lunch or whatever. But the true kudos go to you guys, the staff, not us, as far as I'm concerned. So thank each and every one of you.
Yeah, the school board event, or the opportunities to visit the schools is always great. I think we have Triplet coming up this week, rescheduled for the second or third time with bad weather. So
No more bad weather.
no more bad weather for now. So always great to do that.
Yeah, Stonewall's had to cancel theirs twice. So it's hard to get to them, but anyway. I'm all talked out. I have nothing further. Unless anybody else does, I'm going to call for an adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Gutschall. Second. Mr. Rickard, I knew you would. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. You're adjourned by 5-0 vote. Mr. Street is no longer here.
Move here, get your share, everybody.
Would you get